Today, my topic is something that is more pressing to me, and that is, it is about you, each of you. So I've structured this around 3 themes that are important to me and have given me guidance in my own journey as an educator. These 3 themes are, firstly, reinvention and lifelong learning. Secondly, what I call living out loud. And third, our highest purpose. My first theme is reinvention and lifelong learning. He not busy being born is busy dying. This is by Bob Dylan, a famous musician many of you may know. This was actually my dad's favorite quote, and I learned it from him. So I've reinvented myself twice so far. The first was about 2 decades ago when I gave up my dream of a career in cricket to move to the US to study for college. Rather than being bitter about the corruption in cricket at that time that prevented people like me from having a career, I saw the opportunity to build a global life and a global career. A bigger reinvention happened 10 years later. After working in social entrepreneurship for 10 years in 4 continents, serving 500 plus social entrepreneurs, I decided to start an organization working in leadership development and adult education. But prior to starting this organization, at the age of 32, I had no background in education, no formal training, not even any real teaching experience. And here I am, invited to be a keynote on the future of education. Sounds crazy, but this, by the way, is not that rare. Most innovators come from outside their field because experts don't usually change the status quo. So that's a bit about my own story, those 2 reinventions. And I'm sure there will be many more reinventions in my life in the coming years. I think it should be easy to see why this is important today. Nobody could have predicted what 2020 was going to become. And nobody can predict yet how this will shape 2021 and beyond. So if you're not making plans for your own learning during this time, I suggest you start. Don't overthink what you should be studying because, again, nobody knows where the world is going. Follow your nose, learn what your gut tells you to learn, and it will be worthwhile in hindsight. You can read a series of books on a topic, interview a set of experts on a topic, watch a documentary series, do an online course. There are so many options. Whatever you do, keep learning new things. Keep getting born. My second theme is about living out loud. And so here is my second quote. Sometimes we have to do a thing in order to find out the reason for it. Sometimes our actions are questions, not answers. This quote is by the novelist John le Carre. Some of you may have read he's very famous for spy novels. You see, the problem with reinvention is that you have to accept that you will be called crazy. People have told me I'm crazy many times, but the 2 main moments were, first, when I graduated from college, it was a recession year. I was on track to be offered a great job at a prestigious company in the US that would have added value to my CV for the rest of my career. I would also have been making more money at 22 than my dad was at 50. When I turned down that opportunity, I didn't even know what I was going to do instead. I just knew it was not going to be consulting. And because it was a recession year, everyone thought I was crazy. But I was living out loud. 10 years later, I was back in the US with a great job, and I was about to apply for my green card when I decided to quit and move to Kenya to start an NGO. Leave a green card and start an NGO in Africa? Again, everyone thought I was crazy. But I was now obsessed with the idea of helping people build more meaningful careers, and I wanted to do it in the global south. Since then, we have also launched this NGO, Amani Institute, in Brazil and right here in India. And I think I've learned more in doing that than I ever would have if I had stayed in my comfortable job in Washington, DC. This is what I mean when I say that education is also about living out loud. Not just thinking out loud, but living out loud. When I made these decisions, I didn't know how they would turn out. My actions were questions, not answers. And the only way to answer those questions was to live them out. I've also acted out other questions. When I lived in Washington, D.C., I started a network of peace-building entrepreneurs. That didn't last very long. When I lived in Kenya, I started an amateur improv comedy group. It also only lasted a few months. In the last 1 year, I've created an Instagram project called Acting Global. Check it out, participate. But to be honest, I don't know where it's going. These projects were all questions, and I learned so much from asking those questions, even if I didn't have the right answers. I also met lots of new people who've added so much to my life that I wouldn't have met if I hadn't asked these questions, if I hadn't lived out loud. And perhaps most important, I've just had so much fun doing these crazy side projects. My final theme is around our highest purpose. Before I introduce the quote, let me ask you a question. What is the highest purpose of education? Think about it for a moment. I don't mean something like to get literacy or to find a job. I'm talking about a more transcendent purpose for education. For me, the best answer to that question is in this quote from one of the most famous educators of all time, Maria Montessori. She said, "Establishing lasting peace is the work of education. All politics can do is keep us out of war." Talk about a vision for change. This is why we are called Amani Institute. Amani means peace in Swahili, but it comes from the word Aman, which of course means peace here in India too. When we started out, we were only going to focus on the education of peace builders, people who go to work in war zones. But then we realized that the only way to a lasting peace is not just to solve conflict, but to solve all social problems. And we need as many changemakers as possible if we are going to solve all social problems. And in today's troubled and polarized and increasingly intolerant world, this seems to be a more important task with every day. So I will end with asking you this one final question. What is your highest purpose? I'll tell you mine. It is not only about education, though education is currently the means to it. My highest purpose is to help everyone achieve their own highest potential, so that where you are born does not determine where you end up.